Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Innocent Until Proven Guilty. This will be Part 5, Chapter 5, entitled Numb. Izuku took a deep breath as he stood outside the door to the 1A classroom, listening to the murmurs on the other side. He would normally be shaking with nervousness, but his whole body is filled with that aching numbness he felt back in Nedzu's office. He's felt like this before, he knows. It had been so long, though. Shaking himself of his thoughts, Izuku opens the door to the room slowly. As he does so, all sound from the class stops and it turns deathly quiet. He walks into the room, resolutely staring at the floor. Keep your head down and stay quiet. That usually means less pain. He takes slow, measured steps to his desk, and he feels it. Feels their eyes tracking him. Eyes down, Deku. Don't look at them. The time it takes to get to his seat could be seconds, could be hours even. As he reaches the desk, he places his bag on the floor and sits keeping his eyes locked on his desk in front of him. He doesn't dare look up. He can still feel them all boring into him. Stay numb. Aizawa-sensei clears his throat from the front of the classroom, the sound of it ricocheting around the room, cutting through the heavy silence. Izuku feels the weight of a few eyes leave him, and he chances a hesitant glance toward their teacher, unsure of what he'll see. Looking straight to Aizawa-sensei and nowhere else, they make eye contact, and Izuku sees Aizawa's eyes soften, just the slightest bit. That's unexpected. Good to have you here with us, Midoriya, Aizawa started. We haven't covered much in your absence. Just a discussion on private property laws, he stated, tone turning a bit sharp as he eyed the other students. When his eyes land back on Izuku, they soften once more. Todoroki took notes for you, and I ask that you stay a few minutes after classes end today, so I can go over this with you. Understood? He asked. Voice still its usual gruffness, but Izuku just focused on his eyes. They were like a pool of safety right now for him. No hatred, no hostility, just kindness there, and Izuku was latching onto it like a lifeline. Yes, Sensei. Izuku responded, void of any emotion. At his words, he felt tension thicken the air. No one spoke, but they didn't need to. Aizawa let out a sigh and nodded. Good. Now there are only a few minutes left in class. You may all use the time to reflect on today's lesson and self-study, he stated, moving to sit at his desk rather than the corner with his sleeping bag as usual. Interesting. As his words registered, Izuku chanced a glance around the room. He regretted it instantly. Ashido was the first person he saw, and he tried not to think about the times she used to include him in her gossip talks. She used to tell him how nice it was to have somebody really listen to what she had to say. She was always so bubbly and cheerful around him. Now she had only hatred in her eyes. Gone were the kind words and cheerful hugs. Next were Kirishima and Kaminari, both looking at him with fear as he met their eyes, which quickly shifted to barely contained anger. Kirishima's fists were clenched and his quirk was activating seemingly on instinct. Does this make you manly, Kirishima? Thinking I, of all people, would betray you? No, stop. Get a hold of yourself, breathe, slow and steady. Don't you dare show them this hurts you. Jiro, Shoji, and Aoyama were all resolutely looking away with tense postures. Kachan wasn't looking at him either, but Izuku couldn't sense anything different about him, which was a small relief. Dark Shadow, who Izuku had always gone out of his way to talk to and include, despite them being a quirk, was hiding behind Tokuyami, who was watching him with an unreadable expression. Meanwhile, Sero was leaning in his seat, as far away as he could be. Chancing a look at some of his closest friends, he turned toward Uraraka and Ida, and nearly gasped. The pure disgust on their faces made him flinch. Hard. These were his friends, people he trusted, people he fought to save and stay by their side. In front of him now, they resembled strangers more than friends. His heart started racing. The numbness from earlier had been fading, and that was a problem. Ida looked as though he wanted to scold him or kill him, which was disappointing if he's being truly honest. He should have learned from Hosu. The thought of that drives the knife in his back a bit deeper. You'd be dead right now if it weren't for me, Ida. Perhaps Stain didn't get his message through the first time. Uraraka is merely scowling at him with her mouth in a thin line. She wants to say something, he knows it. But her eyes, they are what make him freeze. Her eyes are searching him, looking for something. Evidence? Something to prove he's a villain? Don't show them you're weak. Don't be the same useless Deku they think you are. You need to stay calm, stay numb. Don't let them see you break. Heart pounding and breaths becoming too shallow, Izuku turned to the only person who had always understood, and hoped to Kami things hadn't changed. Shouta was staring at him, eyes soft, expression more open than Izuku had seen it in a while, especially in public. He looked disappointed, but not in Izuku. As their eyes met, all of Izuku's panic slowed and faded. He took a deep breath as Shouta sent him a rare smile, one that at any other moment would make him blush furiously. He hadn't changed. He's still on Izuku's side. Without words, Shouta stood and walked to Minetta's old desk, eyes never straying from Izuku. I'm glad you're here, Shouta said softly as he sat down. Izuku had turned in his seat to face him so they could talk, resolutely ignoring the daggers being glared into his back. I took notes for you, as Sensei said. We can go over them together if you'd like. Izuku sent the other boy a small, hesitant smile of his own, then pulled out a notebook to take his own notes on what they discussed. As he did so, several of his classmates gasped, sounding scared, and he froze. Right. How could I forget? Hey, Shouta whispered, just loud enough for him to hear. Snapping his attention back to him, he felt Shouta reach out and take both of his hands in his, gently and with slow movements in case Izuku wanted to pull away. Don't worry about them. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere, he promised. Izuku gave a small nod, and they worked quietly in their own little world until the bell rang, signaling the end of class. The rest of the morning passed the same. Each class was eerily quiet compared to normal. His classmates would glare at him and watch him with apprehension the whole time. It would only stop when one of their teachers called them out on it. Present Mike had been the most vocal about the students focusing on their work and not staring. He sent Izuku sympathetic glances throughout class, and despite the pity, it came across as just being extremely kind. None of the teachers had called on him in class, and he was grateful for it. Refusing to take notes, Izuku resolved himself to ask Shouta for his notes on the lectures later instead. When lunch rolled around, Shouta had pulled him aside and walked them to a quiet classroom that was empty. Despite the numbness still in his bones, the moment Shouta pulled him into a hug, he completely broke. He didn't utter a single word, but he didn't need to. He clutched desperately to the back of Shoto's school blazer, fists clenched tight, as if he were afraid he would disappear. His breathing became shallow again like before, heart rate picking up and eyes starting to sting as tears began to well. He didn't want to cry. He didn't want to be weak. But, in the safety of his friend's arms, face buried in his chest and hidden from view, he felt all the walls he built up crack and give way. The dam had burst, and all the emotions he'd kept at bay came swarming in. He felt angry. He felt useless. He felt betrayed. Months of time spent helping his classmates, listening to them, and trying to protect them. For what? For them to turn their backs on him so easily? He feels like an idiot for trusting like this, for opening himself up and thinking that UA could be different. You knew better. Stop lying to yourself even if you trusted them. You never showed them the real you. You never trusted them that much. Sobs rack his body and his knees give out on him. Instead of crashing to the floor, though, strong arms stayed clasped tightly around him and lowered him gently to the ground. Keeping his face buried in Shouto's chest, he feels warmth flood him, and his muscles relax instantly. He must be using his quirk. Shouto had one hand carting through his curls, the other rubbing soothing circles on his back. They spend the entire lunch period in each other's arms, and Izuku slowly calms down. It wasn't until the warning bell rang, signaling the impending start of afternoon classes, that Izuku pulled away. He sniffled, head pounding from all the crying, but feeling lighter all the same. Looking up, he sees nothing but kindness and a hint of concern, still in Shouto's heterochromatic eyes. Reaching a hand out slowly, he gently cupped Izuku's cheek, and Izuku found himself leaning into the touch. Using the sleeve of his other arm, Shouto gently wiped his face of any tear stains or remnants. He had a soft smile on his lips. He needed this, needed to get it all out of his system, and he's certain Shouto knew that as well. After classes end for the day, Izuku stays in class as instructed by Aizawa to discuss the lecture from homeroom. Shouto clearly wanted to stay as well, but Aizawa tells him it won't take long and he can wait outside the class for Izuku if he'd prefer. He does. Izuku is still seated at his desk, watching Aizawa, who had an unreadable expression on his face. He keeps his eyes on Aizawa, tracking him as he moves out from behind his desk and takes a seat at the desk directly next to Izuku. He knows this isn't middle school. He isn't at Aldera anymore, but that doesn't mean that he fully trusts Aizawa. So, he keeps his hands on the desk in front of him, remains vigilant, and waits for his teacher to make the first move. He needs to know what role to play. Aizawa sighs and leans forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Izuku resists the urge to flinch. I'd like to apologize. Aizawa starts, voice soft and gentle, surprising Izuku. He has no clue what Aizawa would be apologizing for. I know this must have all come as a shock to you, the way your classmates have become hostile almost. He continued. Izuku doesn't move, doesn't dare say a word. I want you to know that none of the staff agree with them that you are a traitor. We do not, in any way, see your notebooks as evidence of you selling out your classmates or heroes. He states firmly, and Izuku's muscles relax slightly at the words. I know you, kid. You're one of the most heroic students I've ever taught. There's no part of you that would betray anyone, Aizawa assures, and when Izuku looks in his eyes, he sees sincerity there as well. It's overwhelming. He knew his sensei was the type to throw his life on the line for students, as they all saw at the USJ. But Izuku had thought that was where the loyalty ended, at least for him. Aizawa is showing him that he's in his corner, that he cares. And Izuku isn't sure what to do with that knowledge. Letting out a shaky breath, Izuku gives a short nod to show he's listening, but doesn't dare speak. On Friday, I want you to know that I'll be there with you the whole time, problem child. He informs, deferring back to the now common nickname he had dubbed Izuku with. He's not sure how he feels about Aizawa being there for the interrogation. He doesn't get time to dwell on it, though, because Aizawa has more to say. I also want you to know that if you ever need to talk about anything, you can always come to me. I'll take it seriously. You don't have to do this on your own. Izuku likely won't be taking him up on that, since at the end of the day, Aizawa is still a teacher. Yet, he's shocked to find the words comforting, so he gives Aizawa another nod. Seemingly satisfied, Aizawa reaches a hand out slowly and ruffles Izuku's hair. Izuku's eyes go wide, and he freezes, all thoughts coming to a halt. Aizawa-sensei, his teacher, is ruffling his hair. What the fuck? Izuku isn't sure why, but a warmth starts to flood his chest at the action, and it takes a considerable effort on his part not to lean into it. Before he can question it any further, Aizawa pulls his hand away and heads back to his desk. Shaking himself of his thoughts, Izuku quickly grabs his things and bolts to the door. Hand on the doorknob, he pauses, turns back over his shoulder to look at Aizawa. "Thank you, Sensei," he whispers quietly, then scurries out of the room, the door closing shut behind him. Shouta was worried. No, that was an understatement. The moment Midoriya arrived to homeroom, he took one look at the kid and had to fight the urge not to scream at someone. The kid's eyes were dead, face pale, and he looked nothing like the problem child. He was curled in on himself as though to make himself smaller, less of a threat even. It made Aizawa furious. This wasn't right. This kid was pure energy most days, with a smile that rivaled the sun's. But now the kid was just a pit of nothing. No trace of the Midoriya that was in his class just last week. Nedzu said he would be informing Midoriya of the details of the interrogation. That way he wouldn't be in the dark, nor would he hear it from a classmate first. Shouta had agreed, since he felt it was best the kid be prepared. But he almost wanted to take it back now. Never did Shouta ever want to see this lifelessness in the eyes of a student ever again. He had hoped, as the day went on, that the students would start to feel guilty for their avoidance and glares, that they would see reason and would change their minds. But it only seemed to get worse. As expected, Bakugo and Todoroki were the only ones to treat Midoriya anywhere close to normal. Shouta was a bit surprised by Bakugo's defense of Midoriya and the sheer faith he had. But he wasn't about to complain. Though Midoriya likely couldn't see it, Bakugo had been glaring at the other students the whole day, while Todoroki had made it his mission to comfort Midoriya. Shouta was glad those two were being supportive, but it wasn't enough. He was extremely disappointed in the rest of his students. They had all turned so cold toward the problem child. It was wrong. He would be the first to admit he was nervous about the other classes he wasn't teaching that day, so during lunch he bombarded all the other teachers for news on his class. Nedzu had instructed them all to keep an eye out, but Shouta had to be certain. They all seemed to be very concerned for Midoriya, which isn't surprising. The kid had wormed his way into each of their hearts. He had always paid attention in class, helped his classmates, and would find any way to bombard the teachers with questions about their quirks. They would all die for that kid, no doubt about it. They told Shouta about how withdrawn the kid was, how vacant his eyes were, and how he looked like a shell of the kid they all knew and cared for. He knew this from what he saw in his class, but he had hoped it had gotten better. After thanking the other teachers for looking out for him, Shouta sat down on the couch with Hisashi in the teacher's lounge. He laid down with his head pillowed in his husband's lap, desperate for a moment of peace from this shitty day. Hisashi's hands found their way into his hair and Shouta sighed, tension falling away. His husband always knew what he needed. "I'm worried, Zashi," he whispered. Hisashi paused for a moment. Clearly he hadn't expected Shouta to want to speak. Before he hummed, I know, Sho. I'm worried too. He seemed pretty disassociative in my class today, and I tried to keep the other students from glaring at him. But Kami, they were relentless, Sho. He whispered back. I'm going to talk to him. Let him know I'm on his side, and that he can come to me. He won't, I know that. But I'm still trying to build trust with him, Shouta said lowly. I think that's a good idea. I'm just glad you'll be with him Friday. I couldn't imagine the listener having to do that all alone, Hizashi said softly. Shouta just nodded. Eyes closed, he started to drift to the feeling of Hizashi's hand still carding through his hair. As he watched his problem child leave the classroom, he felt a small smile come to his lips. The kid had been eerily quiet all day, but Shota's words must have gotten through somehow, because the kid stopped to thank him. He resolved himself to see the kid through the rest of the week. After Friday, this can all go back to normal. At least, he hoped it would. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 5 of Innocent Until Proven Guilty. Chapter 6 will be up next. I'd love to hear your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. And as always, thank you all so much for listening.